Hello, welcome to West Coast Biased. I'm Andrew Nemec, joined as always by Jason Suke and Nemec. Suke, we waited a day in part because we both thought maybe something was coming down the line, and sure enough, here we are. Will Stein headed to Kentucky. We also have some clarity on the Oregon State job and the coming together staff for Coach Shepard. So a lot to get into. First of all, what were your thoughts when I said let's wait a day? Were you doing the same math I was, or were you like, does he know something, or where were you? Because it just seemed like whether it was Lupoi or Stein, we were going to get, and maybe both, we were going to get clarity on somebody, and I just thought it made sense to wait.
Yeah, by the way, I still think we're going to get both. By all accounts, the way you're hearing, it sounds like Lupoi is going to be the guy at Cal. I mean, Lanning even talked about it in the post game against Washington that, you know, he understands that people are coming from his staff and was very complimentary about Tosh Lupoi. And so it wouldn't shock me within the next 48 hours if we're, you know, having the same conversation with Will Stein to Kentucky and then Tosh Lupoi to Cal. We're looking for two new coordinators. We do know that Stein is going to stick around at Oregon through the playoff. And I'm assuming, obviously, that Lupoi would do the same thing. Lanning did that when he took the job from, you know, Georgia. He stuck around through the national championship. So, no, I mean, this is one of those where the coaching carousel, I don't remember, and then this may be recency bias, but I went through on my show yesterday. Dude, it's insane. When you look at everything that's gone down here in the coaching carousel, I mean, there is a real chance. All we really need is Duke to beat Virginia in the ACC title game, and you would essentially have 12 teams playing in the playoff. It's not essentially. You'd have 12 teams playing in the playoff, and 4 of them would be without coaches, basically. Tulane, North Texas, whichever one gets in, they don't have a coach. Now, granted, they're going to be able to finish, you know, what they started. This isn't the Lane situation. But North Texas and Tulane both have lost their coaches. Mississippi obviously lost their coach. He's in Baton Rouge. James Madison would get in, by the way, just FYI, if that happened. If Duke beats Virginia, James Madison is going to get into the playoff. The ACC will not have a team in. James Madison doesn't have a coach. He's going to UCLA.
Right.
And there's one other one as well. Who is it?
Ole Miss promoted inside, but they'd have a new coach.
Yeah, they'd have a new coach. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy that this is kind of the way it works. And, you know, you had the coach from South Florida, Golash, that was going to Arkansas, but then he stopped off in Auburn and was like, no, let's do this. And all these schools that we just talked about that lost their coach, they have to go find coaches. BYU, by the way, is a real team that could beat Texas Tech. I don't think they will, but if BYU wins, they're in. Sounds like Kalani Sitake's 1 foot into Penn State at this point. So, I mean, welcome to the world of college football, and we can bitch and moan all we want about it. I mean, God, we're having congressional hearings on it, which is embarrassing. Don't get me started on that. This is just, it's a weird world. So the fact that Will Stein, whose name wasn't really being kicked around for any job, like it was kind of weird that he was a hot guy last year. This year, you know, 2 weeks ago, his name wasn't really mentioned in anything. All of a sudden, you know, they get rid of Stoops for $38 million, and all of a sudden it's like, well, Will Stein's from Kentucky. Will Stein, come on down. I mean, he was like the very first guy, and that's kind of what it feels about Lupoi too. Is, you know, outside of Rolovich and just kind of doing the interim thing, it kind of feels like Lupoi has been the guy all along that people are circling at Cal. So, you know, it's because at this point, right, like early signing period's right around the corner, and
Tomorrow
you got to find some kids.
Wednesday, yeah.
You know, this thing is freaking nuts. So yeah, I mean, you get, if you're Cal, dude, if it's not Tosh Lupoi, you better figure out who the hell it is. You better figure out fast. Same thing with Kentucky. You know, I mean, you hired Will Stein. Will Stein has 2 days to try to figure it out, and you got this weird thing. I mean, I'm assuming that a bunch of kids aren't going to go with Will Stein over with him to Kentucky, but what if Will Stein takes a couple, you know, analysts or a couple lower level catches with from Oregon and goes to Kentucky, and then Lupoi takes a couple? You know, this is it's insane. It really is just this whole mess of it. And I'm not one of these guys that advocates like government involvement. That seems like the dumbest thing in the world to me. That the government's going to tell a multi-billion-dollar business what their rules are. Imagine Congress stepping in and telling the NFL that they need to change their playoffs. But I will say the dumbest thing in the world is that free agency in both coaches and players goes down in the middle of the season, in the most important part of the season. And that's, to me, bananas. And the ones who created it are the coaches. The coaches are the ones that wanted the early signing period.
I disagree, man. I think the NCAA created this mess. I've argued since the early signing period started. you can have kids who are they're into the program. That's where they want to go. Make it an early signing period, potentially like the end of July, into August, and you can sign then before the season really starts, right? Yeah. So you make it like August 15th or something. Sure. And like, yeah, you're preparing for fall camp. Guess what? Right now you're preparing for playoffs. So that's a better scenario. And then you keep the late signing period in February. And if you choose to sign in and sign up in mid-August, I said you should also, because it'll set the market for the rest of the cycle, you should also have to publicly disclose any NIL deal you get.
Okay, but question: Who's decides this? Like you just said, you disagree.
The NCAA can decide this. You said it was on the coaches.
Who is the NCAA? Who's the NCAA?
A governing body that does nothing.
Yeah, it's not a governing body. The university presidents, the athletic directors, and the coaches are the ones that make all these decisions.
And then you can even go further and say the TV companies actually make the decisions when it comes to conference realignment. There's nobody in control. That's part of the problem.
There's no one with an evil handlebar mustache, like twisting in the wind. This is all done by the same people that now bitch about it. Like every one of these guys that bitches and complains, they're the ones that set the rules. Yeah. It's the most insane thing in the world. You have run the most corrupt system for 100 years that has benefited everybody but the players. And now all of a sudden you're reaping all the rewards of it more than ever. But now you're going to sit there and have the nerve to complain about a system that you built. But
I don't think the coaches necessarily built it. I think university administration and TV companies are mostly to blame for the conference realignment nightmare. They're mostly to blame for the transfer portal nightmare that we're in now.
What, the coaches don't mind when they're getting paid $13 million and they're dropping. The first time a coach has a 10-win season, dude, that coach is gone. Every one of those coaches.
Everybody does that. So do players.
Yeah,
when they have a huge season, they transfer.
You can't take $10 million and then have the nerve to complain about the system that gave you $10 million. This is Dabo Sweeney.
Yeah, you can.
This is Dabo Sweeney. And the day that players get paid is the day I do something else. Oh, you didn't go do something else. And we can sit here and complain about Lane Kiffin, but John Summerall, the first time he got his team to the playoff, he's out of there. He's going to Florida. There is zero loyalty. The coaches are the biggest hypocrites.
But they have to go. They have to go because signing day is smack dab in the middle of the playoff. The NCAA has the ability to move signing day to an early August situation. And again, I think it's a good idea to pair that with publicly disclosing NIL deals. You don't have to sign, it's optional, but if you do, you disclose your NIL deal. That creates a front-facing market for how much players are worth. And then you sign again in February, because that way we're not having this push. You can wait till the playoffs are over before coaching changes happen. Then, the national title day ends, coaches then starts the coaching carousel, and then you've got a few weeks before there's another signing period. And if you sign up in August, you're locked into an NIL deal anyway. So you're kind of locked in regardless of who the coach is. I think that scenario, August, February, makes the most sense.
So once again, we're committing to a place where we know that there's a real good chance that my coach isn't going to be there. Cool. So I'm taking a 17-year-old kid in August and I say, hey, I'm signing up to go play at Ole Miss, knowing damn well that if Ole Miss has a good year, my coach probably won't be there. That's what we're doing. And we're letting the coach leave again with no penalty.
But kids can leave now, Sue. But they're not binding. Those deals are not binding anymore either. Like it's all a fallacy, man.
Yeah, that's my whole point then. Because all that happens then at that point is we go back to we bitch about something because nothing's enforceable. And the only reason it's nothing enforceable is because no one wants to admit what really is happening here. And that is that no one wants to call these kids employees because it will cost them too much money to do so. Therefore, you're trying to get people to put false rules in place, basically give them antitrust protection because they want their cake and eat it too. And I
are on the exact same page.
I will not listen to
is that on the coaches?
I won't listen to one coach, one AD, one university president complain about this system when they're the ones that benefit from it and have benefited from it. And if they wanted to, all of this could be solved by going to the table and saying this is all going to be collectively bargained. Everyone's going to get a fair piece of the puzzle or a piece of the pie, and we're actually going to have enforceable contracts. And unfortunately, no one wants to do that because you have to pay the players then, and more importantly, you coaches and ADs that have been feeding at this trough for how many years actually have to fall by the rules too. And no one wants to do that. Rules for thee and not for me. So I could care less about one coach or one AD that complains about this system. It's a system that you created.
Fine, but it's not on you just said it's the coach's fault. I don't think it's the coach's fault. I think it's the system's fault.
And my point is, who makes up the system? Coaches.
I don't think the coaches do. I think that's insane to say the coaches do. I think it's insane.
Really?
My wife left her iPad in the room and it's going. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I can hear it.
God. Give me a second.
Yeah.
We're gonna pause and okay. Electronics are out. We had to pause. I have so many. When your kid has like little Tamagotchi pets that go off, you got to make sure all those are thrown in their room. You got iPads and everything that need to be thrown in different rooms because they're connected to phones and they go off.
I wish people could have seen your meltdown.
I got really pissed. I threw the iPad. I just yacked it across the room.
And that'll be when your wife comes home. Yeah, you were a little fired up over that one.
Yeah, I don't get mad that often. That might be the most mad you've ever seen me, actually.
I saw you got a little, your panties in a little twist there. I enjoyed that. You were a little fired up.
All 5'8", 180 pounds of me was about to cause some havoc, man. I don't agree with you that it's on the coaches. I don't. I think they benefit. I don't think there's any question there. I totally agree with you. I think the universities benefit, and I think the universities obviously are the catalyst behind athletes not being considered like employees. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that's on the coaches, because you'll hear coaches say, like, dude, talk to these assistant coaches and talk to, like, even at the lower levels. Because when you say coaches, you're talking about like the 1% of the 1%. And I think that's a mistake, saying like it's on the Lane Kiffins of the world. Yeah, they're like the 1%. It's the same thing with the transfer portal. People are like, the transfer portal is a nightmare. Look at Dante Moore and look at Bo Nix and that. And it's like, you know what percentage of these dudes are just getting booted from their universities? Over half. Yeah. Over half the dudes in the transfer portal, it's because a coach has said, bro, you're not going to play. Get out of here. We want to open
Question. So you just said it. So who's responsible for that? You just said it.
In the coaching staff.
No. You just said the coaches, right?
The transfer portal.
The transfer portal. Because when a kid isn't performing, what does the coach say? I want you out of here because I want someone else in.
Because if I don't win, I'm going to get fired.
Welcome to the world of coaching. But you don't want to so coaches don't want contracts. They don't want the contracts, because if they had it, then they'd have to have a kid there for 4 years. And they don't want the kid there for 4 years.
True. No. It could be year-to-year contracts. You could be a year-to-year employee. The universities are worried about that.
So now we're doing that. We're going back to the year-to-year. So I want you to have a contract.
It's been year-to-year. Year-to-year.
But I don't really want it enforceable, because God forbid we actually have to commit to a kid. So I want to bring a kid in, but as soon as he doesn't do me any favors, I want him gone. This sounds
bad.
The whole thing.
Man, the college system is corrupt. Newsflash, but it's not on the coaches.
I just won't.
There are so many layers to it.
I have zero sympathy, for a single coach, for a single university, outside of maybe Oregon State and Washington State, which absolutely got jobbed. But you created an absolute monster in this thing, and it turned into one big cash grab, and you didn't want to share with anyone else. You wanted it all for yourself. And now this thing is at your feet. And by the way, it's more popular than ever. This idea that somehow college football is broken, get the hell out of here. The numbers are bigger than ever.
More money than ever.
More interest than ever. More people like us talking about it. And so this idea that somehow it's broken.
That had no chance to win are suddenly winning. Yes. Indiana's great. Vanderbilt just flipped Georgia's 5-star quarterback.
Yeah, number one quarterback in the country just is going from Georgia to Vandy now. So don't tell me that the system's broken, and yet we're still crying to Congress to say, please come in and give us antitrust protection. Please let us make rules that for every other billion-dollar business would be laughable. Imagine if the steelworkers union or whatever,
anything. Teachers union, anything.
There you go, teachers union. Imagine if the federal government stepped in and said, we don't really like the way this whole education thing is going. So you as teachers are no longer going to have a say in how anything is governed, and you will take whatever the schools want to give you, and screw you guys, because I don't know, we just liked it the way that it was before. And I know it's illegal, but we just want to give the schools.
Oh, it's ridiculous. But you think that's on the coaches?
I think it was above the layer. It's on every single person that has benefited that. Because if the coaches wanted to stop this, they could, because they could stop being a bunch of ladder climbing people. Like, again, you can't complain about the system, about poaching kids and kids leaving, and then at the very moment that you have success, the very moment that you outkick what your school thinks it is, one of two things happens. You either go to your school and say, I want a 5-year, $90 million guaranteed deal. And if you don't give it to me, they will over there. Or you tell your kids, hey, this was awesome. We all got together for the magical 10-win season that we never thought we'd have. And guess what? I'm leaving. Anyone want to come with me? Wait. Only the kids that I like get to come with me, and we get to go over here and play at a better school. That's what happens. And yes, that is the coaches. The coaches are 100% as much as fault as anyone else in this, which is why I said, I don't just say it's the coaches, university presidents, ADs, coaches, all of them. Every single one of them is responsible for the system that we currently have.
Corrupt system.
And they love to complain about something that benefits them and has always benefited them and will continue to benefit them. And they just don't like it now because it actually benefits someone else too. And it makes their job just a little bit harder. And the moment it became a little bit harder, the Nick Sabans of the world said, I don't really want to do this because I can't run it the way I used to run it. And now it's a little harder for me. So what I'll do now is I'll go on ESPN and I'll complain about the system, even though my agent, Jimmy Sexton, who's the one that orchestrates all this behind.
Right.
Seriously, think about this. ESPN had the unmitigated balls to send Kirk Herbstreit and Dan Orlovsky and Nick Saban and these people up there, all these talking heads, to laud the fact that Lane Kiffin should absolutely have the opportunity to coach Ole Miss while being the coach at LSU and coaching. They actually had the nerve to do that. And not one of them had the guts to say, oh, by the way, Dan Orlovsky, Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin's agent, the one that orchestrated all that, who is your agent? Oh, it's the same guy.
Right.
You think maybe there's a conflict of interest there? By the way, Lane Kiffin in his press conference said, guess who told him to go and take the LSU job? Nick Saban, who was on the dais of college football, the biggest show that ESPN does, and was saying, well, I don't know, it's a tough decision, but I really think Ole Miss should let Lane. I mean, it is so to say that this is why I throw the coaches under the bus with everyone else. And there's coaches I like. There's coaches I've done this for 20 years. There's coaches I respect. There's coaches I like. But the idea that any one of these guys doesn't have blood on their hands, you can't take the blood money and then complain about the system when you are willing to stab anyone else in the back in order to further your career or to get the kid that you want. And at the same time, when a kid doesn't benefit you anymore, the first thing you do is tell him what? Hey, man, I need you out of here because I don't think you can play for me right now. And I understand you want to be here and you want to come play for me. And yeah, this may be about you getting an education and you like wanting to be part of this. And maybe one day you can be like a special teams guy here, but I just really want to get a better player in here. So dude, you need to go out of here. You don't get to do that. And then talk about the system and say, please, Congress, come bail me out. You will get zero sympathy from me. None.
Sure. I think you have a very narrow scope of this a little bit because you said like the only people that might be blameless are like the Oregon States and Washington States of the world. Oregon State has coaches that would leave to get promoted.
That was kind of tongue in cheek.
Oregon State, Oregon State and Washington State both actively de-recruit a huge chunk of their roster.
I just honestly that was more of a wink because I feel bad.
This is my point.
I feel bad that they got basically.
No, I know, but this is my point: is you can plant your flag at any one position and be like, this is who's to blame because it looks bad. You can say the players are to blame. Look at how much money. Like look at Jaden Rashada's recruitment where he demanded all this money and hasn't panned out, and it's on the players. You can, from any perspective, blame a bunch of people. It's a really bad system. Generally speaking, the machine that is college athletics is not letting players unionize. They don't have benefits. And because of that, there are a number of issues that are a huge problem. And some of them have to do with players, and some of them have to do with coaches, and some of them have to do with conferences, and some of them have to do with TV contracts and the TV companies controlling who's in what conference. I agree with you that coaches are partially to blame. I just think you're looking at it from this spot when if I tilted you this way, I could just as easily convince you that it's on the institutions themselves. I could just as easily convince you it's on the TV, the TV companies themselves. And you'd say, yeah, I agree. It's their fault.
Well,
because it's a broken system because we're not having an honest conversation at the table about what needs to happen to fix it. Because the answer, if you talk to any lawyer that deals with anything NCAA, is a collective bargaining agreement. Every single person I've ever spoken with about how do you fix this issue, every single one who's being honest, whether it's off the record or on, says we need a collective bargaining agreement. Every single one, it's like, how do we fix this? Every time it goes back to that. But they don't want to do that.
It's either government intervention, it's a collective bargaining agreement, and I find it adorable that they want the government intervention as opposed to actually sitting down and trying to come up with something that's fair, because the government runs so many things so well.
Write us illegal laws so we don't have to be adults. That's what they're asking for. Yes. It is. And honestly, and they will tell you this. This is, multiple people have told me this off the record. They were hoping that this current administration, who has at times overextended what people would consider the normal legal parameters of decision making. And I'm telling you what I've been told. Yeah. People thought maybe Trump would be like, to hell with it. College athletes shouldn't get paid. And he'd write something that was technically already deemed illegal, and that they could fight that in courts then for a number of years. Yeah. And it would save them a bunch of money and they could continue going on their way. That they intentionally extended this into a Trump administration, hoping that Trump would write an executive order which would bail them out. The problem with that is, and now we're getting really in the weeds, an executive order actually wouldn't hold up given the current legislation that's already been passed, because the current legislation that's already been passed would supersede his executive order. Now, all of that is very complicated, and this is not a pro-anti-Trump thing. I don't do what you're going to do with that. That's not my point. I know, I have heard from multiple lawyers that the goal of the NCAA was, if Trump gets elected, maybe they'll sign something that has already been deemed illegal, and we can kick the can down the road for 7-8 years, whatever.
Yeah. So again, I blame the whole thing, and I just feel like the coaches are the ones that get to put their hands up and say, not us. And I won't. No, I don't. It's not a matter of me saying the coaches are at fault. It's a matter of me saying the coaches are as at fault as anyone else, but the coaches get to put their hands up and say, whoa, we're just victims in this whole thing too. And that's a crock of shit that I just won't abide. Sure. Because the coaches love to pull the, not us.
I totally agree with you. You just said where's this mess at the feet of? You said it's at coaches. And I said, well, it's at everybody. It's not just coaches. That's the only place we disagree. But I hear you. I think the coaches are partially to blame. And by the way, under the current calendar, in the current situation that they're in, I have zero problem, literally zero problem, saying it into the mic as loud as I can, with Lane Kiffin leaving when he did. Zero. I don't care at all. That's the current system. It is the way it is. And if he can get a bag to go do it, this is capitalism. This is the way America works right now. Go get yours, man. I don't care. Until they fix the system, which is broken in all these high institutions and everyone's making money off this system, until you really have an honest conversation and saying, yeah, we're making money hand over fist, but we can continue to point to the kid that transfers that gets $1 million and say he's spoiled, or we can point to Lane Kiffin and say how selfish. And until they stop kind of scapegoating individual people at the 0.1% and actually deal with the real issue, I don't care what everyone else does. Fix the issue as it actually is, or spare me the 0.1% example that makes you look right, because you're dead wrong. So stop pointing at it. That's how I feel.
The other thing to remember.
Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, even the way I explained it, because I'm getting fired up.
No, the other one that I throw out there all the time is that no one seems to give two craps about is you realize that school does start and stop at specific times. Sure. So, and no one seems to care about that, which again, I find adorable, because again, we don't want to call these kids employees. We still want to call them, quote, student athletes, but no one gives a shit about the actual academic calendar, and that you are talking about kids that are supposed to be trying to go to school to get a degree. And you got kids like that you're just randomly trying to throw in and out of semesters. And some people are on quarters, some people are on semesters. No one seems to care about that.
Which is why I said late July makes sense. It's before school starts. And yeah, it's weird, but it is school. And people just forget that. So you do kind of have to do it before school starts.
Yeah, my daughter goes to Portland State, and she's pre-med. So like that's all she does is study. And I'm not saying a bunch of these kids are pre-med. But I've it's funny. Finals week is in 2 weeks, right? Like
right before the holiday break. Yeah.
Right before the holiday break. So yeah. So we just finished Thanksgiving, and I was just joking because like the soon as Thanksgiving was over, my daughter had her head just crammed in a book, and I won't see her for the next 10 days. Sure. That's all she is. She would just be upstairs in her room, and it's study, go to school, library, final, all this. And this idea that we are asking these kids in this moment to not only put in a 60-hour week for football. These kids are taking finals right now.
They're not.
Well, I'm just saying.
You
Like,
want to have an honest conversation about how school works for
that's
student
what I'm
athletes
saying.
in the university system?
This is what I'm saying. This is how laughable it is. We're expected to believe that right now, getting ready for conference championships, getting ready for the college football playoff, that we're asking these kids right now to, quote, go to school, right? Take finals over the next 2 weeks and decide what they're going to do, what school they're going to go to, all in the middle of this. Like, this is the component where it's so effing hypocritical, and it just make the thing, just get rid of the academic component if you want, because what you have, like in all of these conversations that we have, right, in all of this, not one time talking about Lane Kiffin or Kalani Sitake or Will Stein or any of that, not one time have I heard one single person just bring up that by the way, there are finals and we do have to decide. Most schools restart January 2nd. Right. You do have to kind of figure out, by the way, where you're going to go to school, what classes you're going to take. So if I enter the portal in January 2nd and decide that I'm going to go somewhere else, so how long do I have to decide what school I'm going to go to, pack up all my crap that my life, like I'm going to transfer from.
You have an apartment. In real world, you have an apartment that you now have to move from.
And I got to pack all that stuff. And then I go to Wisconsin, and then I'm in Wisconsin, and I got to figure out what classes I'm going to take. And I got to figure out where I'm going to live. And I got to figure out how does that, my son transferred just in state. He transferred from 2 state universities. Right. And just that, dealing with that was an absolute nightmare. I mean, and we're all in the same system, right? Like from Eastern Washington to Western Washington or Central Washington,
calendar-wise,
that should all be in one thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Like, he ended up losing like almost half a year of school because the degree that he's chasing at Central Washington, it's the same degree that he's chasing at Western Washington, but the requirements are slightly different, and they don't quite offer this class, and this class doesn't count for that class. And that was just a regular computer science kid. That was, and we just thought, when he was like, "Hey Dad, I'm thinking about maybe, transferring schools." I was like, "Oh man, it's doing in state. We'll be fine. No big deal." And while we were going through that, we were like, "Oh my God, this is an absolute nightmare." And I'm like, we're losing like a lot of credits here. But at that point, kind of, we're committed to it. And it's like, all right, buddy, we'll fine. We'll figure it out. It's an extra, we'll figure it out. And it's just one of the things, if you've ever had a kid or if you've ever had to transfer schools, and like I said, that's state schools that are that are under the same umbrella. Imagine going from the University of Oregon to the University of Toledo or wherever, where one's on quarters, one's on semesters, the degrees don't line up at all. Like, I know at Oregon, they have like a specific kind of program that's designed for athletes. I forget what they call it. It's like
general science.
Yeah, it's like a general science thing. You can kind of create your own major, right? Like, you can kind of finesse it and you build around it. And I'm pretty sure that doesn't exist at most universities. So imagine being halfway through your degree at Oregon, and now I got to pack up, and in 1 week's time, I got to go somewhere else and find out that how many of those classes don't mean jack S at the other one. And so this idea of what we're doing, and we're talking about what benefits the schools, and what benefits, TV, and what benefits, keeping rosters together, and what benefits coaches, and what benefits, being fair to the players and all this. And not one time has anyone said anything about the idea of actually trying to get a college degree. So that's fine. If we don't want to put academics in it at all, okay, I understand. This is beyond academics at this point. We all, like, I saw the look on your face when you laughed when I talked about finals, and that's fine. If that's what we're doing, then again, just come out and say that and be like, okay, well, all right, we're getting rid of that. You want to go to school? Great. You don't, whatever. You're a professional now. We're signing contracts because that's what everyone wants. We want players to sign contracts. We want coaches to sign contracts. We want those contracts enforced. That's what seemingly everyone wants, right? Cool. Then it has to be collectively bargained, and you have to treat them as employees. But again, this goes back to the hypocrisy that drives me nuts. It's an easy solution right there. No one wants to do it. Because then we get into Title IX, and that's not what college athletics is about. And this is about kids and universities and school pride and all this crap. It is like the most dishonest argument that I've ever heard in my entire life, and that's all I ask out of my arguments. I don't care whether it's politics or whatever. You can disagree with me on a million different things. Have some intellectual honesty. That's all I ask.
All right. Come at the table with a little bit of integrity. Just be honest about
just that
the conversation.
Much.
Sure.
Yeah. Look, if you show up and I got to get a new roof. If you show up to do my roof, and you say, hey, by the way, this should cost about 12 grand, maybe 14. But hey, man, I'm really busy and it's rainy and it's crappy and I got to make decisions. And you want me to do your roof, dude? It's $18,000. It just is what it is. And I'm like, well, I thought like a couple months ago you said that you could do it for 13. Hey man, I'm sorry, dude. It's really busy, and I only have 2 that I can do right now, and so this is just what it is.
This
and
is
I totally get it.
In the current climate, right?
Hey man, this is what it is. As opposed to coming up there and then just telling me, oh, you know what? It's 18. It's always going to be. Just give me some honesty. Sure. Tell me what we're dealing with.
Sure.
Just give me some transparency, or just say, hey, by the way, I don't really like you, and I don't really want to be around you. But if you want me to do this, I'll do it. But it's going to cost you. Like, just give me just an ounce of honesty in this. And every single person that's involved in this system, I can't say every single person, but because that's speaking in generalities. But the vast majority of them, they just, from presidents to ADs to coaches, dude, they talk out of the side of their mouths. And that just, I go back to the Dabo Sweeneys. Every one of the coaches that has bitched about this system at some point has exploited it, and they're the ones living, they're the ones not making $1 million. They're the ones making 10, 12, and even in lower level cases, 2.5 to 4. And they're always feasting at it. And they're the ones I think that are most complaining about it. I think maybe that's why I kind of point out the coaches, because it's mostly the coaches that you see in front of the microphone. And then to be fair to them, they're the ones getting asked about it. They're the ones that have the press conferences.
Agreed.
But they're the ones that most complain about it. And I guess that's where I'm like,
they complain about it most because they're in front of a mic the most.
Yes.
Players can't complain about it. ADs hide behind not being available.
Yes.
School presidents hide behind not being available.
And so I want to have some intellectual.
That's why it bugs me when people just blame coaches, because they're.
So I want to, and I'll try to have my intellectual honesty there too, and bring it to it. I think that's probably why I single out the coaches, because they are the ones that end up being the mouthpieces, and they're the ones that complain about it the most. Mm-hmm. But to be fair, if everyone else had a platform the way the coaches did, and we stuck a mic in their face, they would certainly complain about it just as much. So that's, to kind of be fair on that.
Pivoting a lot of bit.
To turn into a whole thing, but it's an interesting topic because
it is an interesting topic.
We're getting ready for the college football playoff, where we're getting ready for conference championship week, and the number one conversation, it's not even close. It's not Alabama, Georgia. It's not Ohio State, Indiana. It's not, can BYU beat Texas Tech? It's not, can North Texas
Notre Dame or Miami, who belongs in?
Nope. The number one conversation is freaking Lane Kiffin and the coaching carousel, and what do we do? Because there's congressional meetings going on right now.
Yep.
Trying to pass the SCORE Act and a couple different things. And I just think that sucks. That this should be a great time of the year for the sport, and the playoff is better than anything we've ever had. And interest is higher than ever, and we're going to get great matchups, and it's going to be a great year, and it feels wide open. And yet this stupid situation we have here,
signing day calendar,
has
problem solved,
has become the dominant force in the sport. So,
Oregon beat Washington 26-14. I kind of thought coming into this one, I mean, this game ended up roughly what we thought. I think you said at the beginning of the year, Oregon should be roughly a 10 to 14 point favorite over Washington. But that Washington was a sneaky good team, and if they played well, they could get Oregon. This game was close, and Washington for 2.5, 3 quarters. And Washington didn't play well at all. And some of that is Oregon doing well. Some of that is, Coleman being banged up, Denzel Boston being, 70, 80%, Damon Williams being uncomfortable. I think that had more to do with Oregon's front. This is what you do when you're a good football team. Yeah. And on the Washington side, this is what you do when you go 10, 11 games into your season and you don't really have a clear consistency or identity. You play a good team and you look like you don't have a clear consistency or identity. If you're Oregon, you play a team like Washington and you can play pretty vanilla. You can run the ball up the middle a whole lot. And even if it's not that effective, you still find a way to win because you're so much better in so many different areas. I thought this just really highlighted these programs being in different spots. Yeah. And the fact that Oregon's frankly a lot more talented, a lot deeper than Washington at this point. And
I just think ultimately, I mean, look, there's lots of reasons why Oregon won. But if I have to pick one, it's Dante Moore versus Damon Williams.
Yep.
And Look, I think Dante Moore has made a case that if Dante Moore wants to come out, and I don't think he's going to, although Will Stein leaving, supposedly he was real tight with Will Stein, and is he interested in, does Oregon promote from within and it runs the same system? They go in and get someone out. I think it's something to keep an eye on.
The draft guys, for what it's worth, I said last week the draft guys were adamant that he's staying, and they're right. Dane Brugler does a great job. He speculated publicly that maybe the wheels are turning on that. Yeah. The NFL Stock Exchange, which I think is a great podcast. They're very well sourced. They've also said that they're hearing that the wheels might be turning on that. Not that it has, but that it went from he's 1,000% coming back. It's not even worth putting him in mock drafts to now, maybe. So something to consider.
Yeah, something to consider, because it's a weak quarterback class, and Moore clearly has some things to work on, but you go back these last handful of weeks, the throw he had at Iowa up the seam to win that game, coming out of his own end zone against Washington, ripping that ball, the Malik Benson touchdown. Dude, those are NFL throws.
The Sadiq throw.
Yeah, the Sadiq touchdown. I mean, these are NFL throws. And it's just something to keep an eye on. Like, depending on who the next OC at Oregon is, does he look at this and say, hey man, if I'm getting feedback that I'm a top 5 pick, hey, maybe it's, maybe I'm not interested in sticking around and going through a new system. But anyway, that's a whole other thing. When I look at when Oregon needed a play, Oregon didn't run the ball. Washington outran Oregon. Now, some of that was Oregon played a light box, and I think that was kind of their thing was, hey, we'll give up some runs, but we're not going to let you be explosive on us. So I think that part of that was, running into light boxes, but still, that didn't change the fact that Washington did a great job against Oregon's run game, and the O-line was back intact. And Washington's defense once again showed up every single game that Washington lost. Ohio State, Michigan, who they lose? They lost to Wisconsin and Oregon, right? They showed up in every one of those games. Their defense played well enough to win every one of those games, and the Washington defense played good enough in this game to win.
Yep. Oregon had 19 points going into the fourth quarter. Yeah, 19. That's a good game.
Yeah, finally the dam broke, and that was just a big-time play by Malik Benson, who's been a godsend with all these injuries, and Dante Moore making an NFL throw. And then I look on the other side of things with Washington, year 2 under Jed Fish, I think in some ways this was a real regression year. And you ended up 8 wins, which is better than what you had, and you played a lot of freshmen. But if I would have told you going into the season that the defense was going to be a upper half Big Ten defense, and it was in almost every category, this is a top 8 defense in the Big Ten. And you were going to have an offense coming back where an offensive line was going to play better than we thought. Right. It's not going to be the worst. Again, it was very average. Let's say it was I think by the Pro Football Focus, I think, again, it's about the 8th best O-line in the Big Ten. I would have said
7th or 8th in the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah. Somewhere in that range. And I know they battled some injuries, but for the most part, it was a above average or offensive line.
Sure.
And I was going to tell you that I had Jonah Coleman coming back, one of the best receivers in the country in Denzel Boston, and a quarterback that we were told and you saw signs could be something really special.
And a freshman wide receiver emerge as one of the better freshmen west of the Mississippi.
So the idea that what was going to hold you back from being a better team and was going to keep you from having a signature win was your offense. I think that to me is a regression. So even though the win total might have been better, I think this year in some ways was a regression. And the thing that would scare me going ahead, and I think Washington played, I think they had 3,000 snaps from freshmen. So, and that's it. You look at it and say, hey, better days are ahead, right? It's, keep everything together. Jet Fish is sticking here. Most of the guys are coming back. Hopefully don't get killed in the transfer portal. Decent recruiting class coming in, right? Brighter days ahead. But what would scare me a little bit was when you look at this year, when we look at all the quarterbacks that we were talking about, right? We can go down the list. Klubnik, Nussmeier, Arch. Although Arch has pulled it out towards the end a little bit. I think some of the Arch Manning stuff is, we're like, oh, for 2 months. Did you see him play Kentucky? But he's pulled it out. But Arch certainly fell on his sword. Lenore Sellert fell on a sword. DJ Lagway fell on a sword. Levitt didn't have. Now Levitt got hurt, but even when Levitt was healthy, did not have the year that we were talking about.
Mhm.
Aiden Childs at Michigan State ended up doing jack squat, getting his coach fired. I'm just trying to think of others down the list that Damon Williams, right? Who we, Damon Williams. Oh man, this guy's got potential to be an All-American. So, and he was not anywhere close to it. So if you're Washington, do you have to ask yourself the question, do we really have a guy with a little seasoning that becomes Kyler Murray and becomes Baker Mayfield or whatever, Bryce Young, whatever small quarterback, because we have to compare small quarterbacks to small quarterbacks. Or do we have a guy that was built up, we were told one thing and never really quite developed? So I think it's interesting for as talented as he is. I think you go into next year as Washington kind of scared that, is this another one of those quarterbacks that gets billed as X and turns out to be Y? It's just funny. I think that is a much bigger, of all the stuff we look ahead to Washington next year, I think quarterback is as big a question mark as any spot on that roster. And there's zero chance anyone would have said that going into the year, but I do not think he answered the question at all. Is that your quote franchise quarterback?
Sure.
Whereas Oregon, like if Dante Moore decides to come back, dude, that's answered in spades. Your only question about Oregon now is, can you keep him there, or does the NFL come calling? And ultimately, the difference in that game, yes, talent level and all that, but the biggest difference in that game was Dante Moore, Damon Williams.
Right.
And I think you saw the difference.
I think because of that, I don't think it's a regression year for Washington. They were so bad in the trenches. Like, it matters so much that they went from last in the Big Ten in sacks allowed, or first, depending on how you want to look at it. They were the worst at giving up sacks, to being functional, and that the defense went from not being good at all to being solid. I don't think you can call it a regression. I don't. I do think in terms of morale and optimism, given what happened, it's weird that we are not more optimistic. It's weird that we are not more bought in to the Jed Fish era, given the problems they solved. And if you look at it, and part of the reason I say that is, look at USC, right? USC has had this recurring issue where they're really good at the skill positions and they're just not very tough inside. They're not good along the offensive line. They're not good at the defensive line. And it's not a one-year fix. It's an entire Lincoln Riley tenure, and he can't seem to fix it. I do think it's encouraging, and I do take some level of optimism in that Washington was able to patch that up in 1 year. And I think that matters. Yeah. I think that really matters. So I give them a little credit there. But I do agree that in terms of program optimism, if you'd have told me that they were at the point they were heading into that Wisconsin game and they had 2 losses and they just had a couple of games left and they were going to be favored in all of them until they get to Oregon, and they ended up 8-4 and had lost to Wisconsin and had no real shot against Oregon. Now, Oregon was never really threatened by Washington. It was a pretty vanilla game script. Again, like you said, let's not load the box. Damon Williams will make mistakes in coverage. We can run it up the middle. We'll pick and choose our spots, and we'll win this football game and get out of here. That would concern me. And I think the last month has been concerning because Damon Williams, you'd expect a young quarterback to progress and to grow. And I think at times he looks more lost than he did in week 3 than in week 3 and 4. And I think this offense looks more lost now than it did in the middle of the season. And that shouldn't happen. And I think one of the things with Oregon that's really been encouraging is all the different wrinkles, all the different motion, all the different little I said wrinkles already, but all the different little wrinkles they have out of, we run this play in this formation with this motion. Okay, now we do this in this play with this motion. And you're like, oh my God, they're in this base set when they get lined up. Then this guy goes in motion here and they throw to this guy. This is what they do. Oh crap, they went the total opposite way for 40 yards. Now we have to account for that. Oregon's really, you can see in Stein, and this is intentional because I want to get to Stein. This has been a masterclass in some ways for Stein as an offensive coordinator. They're on, whether you want to call it their 3rd receiver, their 4th receiver, they're missing 3 of their top 4 receivers from what you anticipated coming out of spring ball. Yeah. They primarily have, again, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4. I don't care how you describe it. 2 tight ends they really like, and then a host of running backs, including 2 true freshmen. On paper, they should not be able to add significant complexity to what they're doing. They've lost bodies. Yeah. I mean, that's a fact. They've lost bodies throughout the year. So while Washington has seemingly had their share of injuries and offensively regressed, Oregon's had just as many injuries
Mhm.
and continues to stack layer upon layer
Yeah.
on their offense. And so as much as it's about Dante Moore, I also think it's about play calling. And I think Will Stein this year has been a masterclass for Will Stein. I talked to somebody who used to be a play caller for a long time, and he said, I used to be able to, especially even earlier in the year when they didn't trust everybody, especially the freshman running backs. I could tell in what formation generally what they wanted to run. Like, okay, they're in this, the tendency is this. Last year, same kind of thing. He said this year, the last month, I'm mostly wrong. When they line up, I'm like, oh, well, this is what they like to run here. Oh, it's a throw to Johnson for 15. He's done such a great job of stacking that they're very unpredictable. And so I think, yes, Dante Moore. But the other thing is, I think Coach Stein, even with a vanilla game plan, is still making defenses work really hard to understand what the heck he's doing because it's complicated. It's getting more complicated as guys are out, which shouldn't happen. That's great coaching.
Well, and now that coaching is going to Kentucky, so we'll see what happens.
And that's interesting to me because I wouldn't have said I thought Will Stein was higher up in the pecking. Like I heard Brian Hartline was the other name I think On3 put out.
Yeah, it was the two that they threw out there.
That made sense to me. Brian Hartline is the wide receiver coach, co-offensive coordinator, whatever, at Ohio State. And has been known for just churning. I mean, Jackson Smith and Jigba,
the receiver run they're on was reminiscent. Alabama had that run for a little bit.
LSU had this run too,
and now we're at Ohio State. It's ridiculous.
They turn out a receiver. He ends up being a high pick. And being successful in the pros. You want a good receiver? Take Ohio State's best guy. It's Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith this year. But that made sense to me. And in both cases, I would have said Kentucky's probably not the job for you, Coach Hartline. You're kind of better than that. You should be the guy that kind of gets to go to a soft landing spot. Same with Stein. I think Stein is a top 5 offensive coordinator in the country. I do. I think he does really good things. I think sometimes he's conservative, but I think, it has taken me being around football more to understand complementary football. And that's a concept that I haven't always understood. And I really didn't understand it with the Chip Kelly teams, right? Okay, if the offense scores all the time, why can't the defense just be a top 15 defense and then they'd be lights out? Well, because Chip Kelly scores so fast, the defense is on the field a crap ton. They're tired, so you need leaner bodies. You can't have all these big dudes because they'll get tired and worn down. So you need to have a top 40 defense that can make plays and create some turnovers. Now, I don't always think that worked, but it was complementary football. Dan Lanning has a very physical style, especially his defense. They're very tough. They keep things in front. Yes, they will give up plays underneath. They don't give up a lot of big shots. They make you shoot yourself in the foot, and they've got good athletes everywhere, so there's no mismatch, right? When you have that kind of defense, you also kind of want a methodical offense because you're playing chess on defense. So if your offense is just going down the field scoring every time in 3 plays a la Chip Kelly, and yes, everyone would love to do that, but when you play defense that way, you also want an offense that's kind of rugged and physical and can turn out 11 play drives and run 2 tight end sets and do some of that. Complementary football. I think within the parameters of what Dan Lanning wants to do, Will Stein has evolved and been a genius in a physical style where we can win in a bunch of different ways. We can throw it against you for 300. We can run it for 300 or 400. And I think that's really hard to do, especially when, again, your head coach is a defensive guy and you have to match his mentality. And I think that's not easy to do, and Stein's done it at a brilliant level. And I think Oregon's going to really miss him.
Yeah, it's true. They can win multiple ways. It's like, with Mario Cristobal, you want to run a physical kind of run heavy offense, but at the same time, it was the most boring, neutered offense in the world. And Oregon has proven that you can win a rock fight and not do it in the most boring, mundane ways. And when you need to step back and rip it, you can step back and rip it.
Right.
I'm with you. And
you said that much more eloquently than I did.
Yeah. Like when you have a successful program, you're going to lose coordinators. It's just the way it is. But this is kind of and this goes true for coaching hires too, right? Supposedly Lane Kiffin is interviewing Alex Grinch to be his defensive coordinator at LSU. God, good luck with that. And by the way, that's just an interview.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw it come across the feed. So again, I take everything I see across my feed with a grain of salt, right?
Sure.
You don't know. mean,
is that the Ed Orgeron of defensive coordinator hires, where it's like he's the first name that comes out because his agent is desperate for him to have his name be out?
It's possible, but it just, when I saw that, I was like, my God, I was like, really? Like if that's that can't be it. That can't be a thing, right? So and it may not, right? Again, people throw that crap out because the defense coordinator at LSU is going to stay, and Lane Kiffin even said like he's going to run the defense through the bowl game, and so
wasn't he promoted to head coach? Pete Golding, isn't that Pete Golding?
No, not the that's at Miss. He's talking about the LSU.
Oh, like, I'm sorry.
That's LSU. Okay. So, my point is, whoever ends up getting hired there, like Lane Kiffin's bringing his offensive staff, he has to hire a defensive staff. The one thing we don't talk about enough is you fail or succeed as a coach based on who you hire. Like head coaches, for the most part, do not run units. Dan Lanning does not run the Oregon defense. Does he have an input on it? Absolutely. Does he decide how he wants the offense to kind of operate? Sure. He is not calling plays on defense. He is not calling plays on offense. You are at the mercy of the guys that you hire. And when you're a new coach, and, the John Summeralls, going to Florida and this and that, so much of your success, Dave Bartu talks about this all the time, College Football Matrix. We paid so much attention to the coaches that get hired and not enough to the coaches hire, because it makes a gigantic difference.
Well, the first thing I said to you, and we'll get there, when Jamarcus Shepard was hired at Oregon State, I messaged you about who are his coaches going to be, who are his coordinators.
It's why every one of these coaches right now, supposedly Kalani Sitake, one of the things he's fighting, and I still think he probably ends up taking the Penn State job because it's a million times better job than BYU. But one of the things that he was supposedly fighting for was his coaches to get paid more. BYU notoriously does not pay their coaches a lot of money. They just don't. They're not competitive with the salaries that are out there. And he knows that you cannot win without keeping your staff together.
Sure.
Look, Dabo Sweeney, when he had his staff together, Brett Venables and Chad Morris, dude, they were on top of the world. And he's never been the same since when he got his coaches pilfered. Right? We see this all the time. And one of the best thing that Nick Saban did was Saban was the best in the world at changing coaches and not having it matter. Didn't matter. Hey, loses Kirby Smart. Think about that. Okay, well, I'm going to go find, a different defensive coordinator. Yeah. And he did it. I think he won national titles with 4 different offensive coordinators, maybe 5. Yeah. It didn't matter. He's like, all right, next guy up. And he was able to bring in guys to work seamlessly in his system. And he was the mastermind behind all that. But all those guys were unique in their own way. And one of the things that Dan Lanning is going to have to prove that he can do is this. We've seen it. I mean, he's been through different coordinators, right? I mean, Dillingham left and he went and got Will Stein and everything was great. But at some point, it does become harder each and every time when you roll through there and you lose other coaches because those coaches take some people with them and they may take some recruits with them and the system changes a little bit and it tweaks. And so this is kind of the last thing that Lanning has to prove besides, can you actually win a national title? But that's, very few people do that. But one of the things that you have to do, the difference between coaching someplace 4 years and coaching someplace 10 or 12 years and continuing the success is, can you replace your coordinators? Can you replace your assistant coaches and not have it miss a beat? Because when you usually replace one, you're usually replacing 2 or 3 because Will Stein will then go and take the quarterback's coach and be like, all right, well, you're coming with me. You're going to be my OC. And Tosh LaPoy leaves and says, all right, well, I'm going to take the defensive line coach because I really like that guy. And he's a hammer recruiter. And we're going to give you a pay bump. And we're going to make you from an assistant coach. We're going to make you the defensive coordinator. And so all of a sudden you could go from losing 2 coordinators to losing 2 coordinators and 4 other staff guys. And then maybe a front office guy that you went and pulled. And you're like, well, he was our assistant general manager. Well, now he's going to be the full-time assistant general manager down at Cal or down at Kentucky.
And if you think this won't happen because it's Oregon to Kentucky, understand that Oregon State just pilfered some of not all, of Alabama's staff. Yeah. So it happens everywhere. If you get a jump in title, you're going to go. And that's
title and pay.
4 and so 5 Alabama guys go to Oregon State. So it will also happen to Oregon at Kentucky and potentially Cal.
And how you handle that and navigate it is the difference between being, I don't know. Again, it's the difference between being Kirby Smart and it's the difference between being Dan Mullen. Or to some extent, again, the best example of this is Dabo. Dabo did a great job for like 7 years, 8 years, keeping that staff together. And it was a really, really good staff. And that was like what he prided himself on. And it was like, dude, I'm keeping this staff together. But eventually the people came calling from it. And once that original staff with Morris and Venables, Morris, I think, ended up going to SMU. That didn't work out. Venables ended up leaving, and now we're seeing some success there. But once these guys leave, it's been a real challenge for him at Clemson. And look at
Brian Kelly is this too.
Yeah, Brian Kelly. Exactly.
Staff, they don't come with it. You eventually, no matter how good a coach you are, you run out of options that do a good job, and it eventually comes back to bite you in the butt, and it did for Brian Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's just one of those things to keep an eye on is whenever you hear these coaching, kind of hires and you see all the kind of movement, the guys behind the scene often are a bigger deal. I mean, every one of these coaches can coach, right? John Summerall knows what he's doing. Yes. He was very successful at Tulane. He knows what he's doing. So, but so did Billy Napier, right? Billy Napier was a really smart coach. Billy Napier is not a dumb man. He knows how to coach. Why did Billy Napier not succeed at Florida? Like, there's just so many things that go into it. So it's not as easy as, well, this guy is a slam dunk hire. Lane Kiffin to LSU is being lauded as this, oh my God, LSU is about to go on this monumental run. We said the exact same thing with Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly is a better coach and had a better record than Lane Kiffin, was a more accomplished coach, and he fell flat on his ass. No one had a better resume that hadn't won a national title other than, Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma. The guy was getting offers from the Dallas Cowboys, for God's sakes, and he went to USC and fell flat on his face. Why? Couldn't have a defense. Yep. Didn't have a defensive coordinator. Couldn't do it. So this idea that, like, just because you get someone, there's no such thing as a slam dunk. There's none. There's so many little components that go into being successful. NIL, general manager, assistant coaches, all of those things that if they're not all in place from top to bottom, you will fail. The margin for error in today's game is thinner than it's ever been. And if you don't have your shit buttoned up at every one of those spots, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Agreed. Speaking of not being buttoned up, Oregon State gets waxed by Washington State. I think we'll look back at this season for a number of things, and one being that I can't believe Oregon State beat Washington State the first time. Like, they have to be just kicking themselves if you're the Cougars that lost that game. This time around, they get an easy breeze to a victory.
And they go to a bowl game.
They get to go bowling, and we mentioned that last week, that Washington State had quite a bit more to play for than Oregon State, who was moving on. Excuse me. God, I got a cold. I'm struggling. Oregon State, the big news for them is obviously they made their coaching hire. You and I talked about this over the last couple of weeks and said they either need to go young and exciting, somebody who could potentially recruit and fire people up that way, or they need to get a proven FCS guy who can bring some of the top tier FCS talent to your program because you're depleted. You've talked about this. The depth of your program shows up in special teams. And I've argued for years that Trent Bray couldn't recruit to save his life and that the bottom of their classes were absolutely abysmal and probably not FCS worthy. Look what happened in special teams. They had the biggest abomination of special teams ever. That's because your depth is absolutely horrific. That's what the issue is. It's, yes, Jamie Christian was bad. Like, let's not overstate that. But the vast majority of that issue is just your depth is terrible. You're recruiting way too many guys and putting them in positions to play when they are not of the caliber to play. They recruited a number of dudes who I had D2 and D3 grades on. You cannot do that coming from Power 4, Power 5 down to, whatever you want to call it, a group of 5 type of school. You still can't recruit at that level. You got to be better. They bring in Jamarcus Shepard. I like the hire, Suke. I got to be honest. I still want to see people. Somebody noted this on Twitter. You haven't really said anything. You usually say how you feel about stuff. You haven't said anything. For me, I want to see what his staff is. I think when you are coming from a place where you have not been an established solo, not offensive or defensive coordinator for years, I think it matters that much more. We just talked about how much it matters for Dan Lanning. I think it matters triple for an inexperienced coach. An inexperienced head coach, excuse me. In no way am I besmirching Coach Shepard here. I like the hire. I don't know exactly how to feel to grade it out until I see who his offensive coordinator is and who his defensive coordinator is. I think that's going to matter for them. But generally speaking, I said there were boxes they needed to check to make the right hire. And it needed to be a young and exciting offensive coach or a proven FCS offensive coach who can bring talent right away. He checks both boxes for me. Let's see. I at least think this is encouraging in terms of they didn't just go back to the well and hire Paul Chryst or try to bring back Jonathan Smith.
Yeah. I'm on board. I've said it all along. This isn't who I wanted hired. This is the type of person that I wanted hired.
He matches the profile, right?
He matches the profile. And supposedly, it's out there that they were aware that Jonathan Smith was getting fired. And supposedly, again, take everything for what it's worth. Supposedly there was some brief conversation between Oregon State and Jonathan Smith's camp. And I'll give Scott Barnes credit for this, and it's the only thing I'll give him credit for, because I still think that whole thing should have been flushed and started anew. Yep. But they kind of figured out that it was a bridge too far. That you're not going backwards. It would have been too hard for a lot of the fan base to swallow. And I applaud them for not trying to do Mike Riley left once and he came back and it worked. So let's do the same thing with Jonathan Smith. Start fresh. And this is the sort of guy, whether it was, Vegan or whether it was Jamarcus Shepard, I just like the idea of going with the younger coach with the big upside, who's energetic, and everything you hear about Shepard. We'll see the press conference today, but everything I've heard, I talked to a couple of guys that I know that are close to the UW program. And they said when he was at UW, dude, the guy was a rock star. People loved him. He's a dynamic guy that he walks into a locker room and that players like, kind of a run through the wall for you coach. And I just think in today's world of NIL boosters and kids having more empowerment, I think that is the model. I think and I like the stoic guy. I like the Mike Rileys. I like the David Shaws. I like the Chris Petersons, right? Those are the sort of guys that I would have played for. Like if you gave me the choice between Dan Lanning and Chris Peterson, and I don't know why, those are just the two that are coming to my mind.
Okay.
I would have gone, I'm a Chris Peterson guy. I don't need to be yelled at. I don't like the big high T energy. It's not me, right? I think I'm the exception. I think the vast majority of kids want the high T. They want the coach ripping Zen and like, and they want that guy. And I think it's important in this day and age, especially when you're operating with less resources, is to have that dynamic personality. Yep. I think you want that guy. And so no offense to Jonathan Smith, no offense to Paul Chryst, who are both fine coaches, and I'm sure could have done a nice job here. I love the fact that you went out and got the unknown, unproven guy. And even if it doesn't work, okay, as I stated before, there's a million things that go into whether this works or not. I love the fact that Oregon State decided to not do the safe old Oregon State thing and Oregon State culture and blue collar. I get it. You're blue collar. You have a chainsaw. Whoop-de-doo. Go inject some life. Go get someone that we look out on the sidelines and be like, damn, man, that guy's into it. Right. Go get me the guy. Yeah, go get me that guy that when he walks into the room, every one of those players is like, hell yeah, let's go.
Oregon went outside the box with the Willie Taggart hire. And I think on paper you'd say that failed.
Yeah.
But because you went outside the box, because you went outside of what you knew, him coming in and culturally being like, hey guys, you don't recruit the right way. You could recruit a whole hell of a lot better than you do. Let me show you.
Yeah.
It opened up a new layer to the program. And then since then, it's been Mario Cristobal who showed them further. And then Dan Lanning, who brings in the SEC, style of football, which they desperately needed going into the Big Ten, along with some of that SEC recruiting. So sometimes even going outside the box for a fresh start, even if that individual coach, and I'm not saying Coach Shepard's going to fail. I'm just pointing out that even sometimes going outside the box with a coach that doesn't succeed has benefits, because he shows you something that you didn't think about yourselves because you were all internal. It was all just us and what we do. And somebody comes out and goes, why do you guys do it this way? What, have you ever tried this? And I think Willie Taggart for Oregon, even though it didn't work, was a good outside the box hire because it highlighted how good they could be in recruiting. And so I think going back to Smith, you accept the recruiting results you're going to get from Smith because that's what you're just accepting what you've already been.
Yeah.
And I think we're all of the argument that stop accepting what you've already been. Yeah. Go look at what you could be. Yeah. And by hiring a guy who's energetic and has been to big time programs and has won at a high level, have a guy that can come in and go, why do you guys do it like this?
Yeah.
Like, why do you do it like this?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I midway through this season stopped hitting. I mean, if you paid attention to this show, you know that week 3 and 4, I went pretty ballistic on social, on this podcast, talking about where things are at. And I totally took my foot off the gas in terms of criticizing Oregon State. But I do want to highlight a few things because I think there are some easy fixes for Coach Shepherd, right? One being Oregon State in the last few weeks has invited walk-ons to the game. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, there's a ticket waiting for them and nothing else. There's no pass. Yeah. They don't meet with the coaching staff. They just have a ticket to go to the game. So you're just filling up the attendance at that point. You're not actively recruiting any of these guys. You're not trying to bring them in. And if you go back and look at the history of Oregon State, there are a number of players who started out as walk-ons who became guys. And it doesn't mean you roll out the red carpet for them, but you do have to have respect. And it can't just be a ticket at the game and show up and like, hey, is there food? Do we get to meet the coaches? What position do you want me to play? It's like, no, dude, you got a free ticket to the game. That's not recruiting. And that's not preferred walk-on recruiting. That's not scholarship recruiting. That's not recruiting. That's wasting everyone's time. And I know that upset some folks. Also, they don't have an in-state commitment in this class, period. Mm-hmm. That's unacceptable. Yeah. And when I say in week 3 and 4, they have badly tarnished in-state relations. And people are like, you don't know that. You couldn't know that. Go look at the last time Oregon State went into 24 hours until signing day and didn't have a single in-state scholarship commitment. Do people even understand how rare that is? I had a recruiting person message me and was like, this is one of the most mind-blowing stats I've seen in recent history. How does Oregon State, as bad as you are, what do you do when you're bad? You circle the wagons. You go back to the well. You go back to where you're known, and it's not uphill sledding. Yeah. Where is it easier to recruit kids? In your home state. So go get 4 or 5 of those guys. You've got 6 commitments. Your class is 126 nationally. The fact that Trent Bray at some point during the season didn't go, holy crap, we've got to pivot, and we've got to get 5 or 6 functional bodies from the home state because our recruiting class is going to fall apart. Yeah. That's unforgivable. It's unforgivable. It's so beyond shitty. I mean, it's pathetic. It's embarrassing. I've talked to people about it who are like, this is completely nuts. If this staff doesn't get a commitment in the next 24 hours, and I don't blame them if they don't, by the way, this is really fast. We're going to go through an early signing period in which Oregon State has 0 in-state commitments. That is unforgivable. Yeah. Now, I have heard really good things from this staff, and I've heard really good things from people who have talked to this staff already about trying to understand the landscape of the state of Oregon. Who are the hotbed programs? Who are some kids that are potentially available that we could go and get that could add to our class because we've got 6 guys. They're doing legwork. And that legwork started before these names were public. I am 100% clear on that. I had a source tell me exactly who was on staff because they were making phone calls and said, hey, so-and-so's making calls about the lay of the land in Oregon. And I just was like, cool, that's great. And didn't report it because it's not my place. I wanted the coaches to have some leeway to do some recruiting work. They are on top of it. They have been asking for names in state to watch film. It sounds like. I think they're really trying to do some work to fix what's been broken. And I really admire that because rather than with 48 hours left going, we'll hit the portal. They're like, hey, who are 4 or 5 guys we can maybe steal right at the end here and feel good about what we're doing? That shows they're passionate. That shows they care. Shows they want to hit the ground running and repair relationships. And I'm already hearing some of that work's being done, and I think that's really encouraging.
That is, because that's all you can hope for at this point. And give it some time because the thing kind of fell apart and it's in a bad spot. But if the one thing that we've looked around the world of college football, when you hire the right guy and there's some resources, and Oregon State has some resources, this doesn't need to take 5 years to turn around, but don't expect a miracle. Like you're coming in, like you said, you're up against the 8 ball a little bit. I think what you just want to see is progress. Like you said, good signs. And hopefully next year you get on even footing and then that second year jump. Like I'm telling you, next year with the Pac-12, Oregon State should have an advantage over most of the schools that are in this new Pac-12 and should be one of the better teams in the Pac-12. And then you just kind of keep stacking that together. And in 2 or 3 years, hopefully you're back competing for a conference title if this is the right guy. And if you're competing for a conference title, then you're competing for a shot in the college football playoff. It doesn't have to take 5 years. So I am cautiously optimistic that next year when we're talking about Oregon State, this will be a much better conversation. But I'm with you. I think a lot of positive, at least vibes right now. And it's been a while since we've had positive vibes at Oregon State.
Pure speculation, but keep an eye on Austin Mack, former big-time recruit, quarterback guy. Mitch Dolan obviously was the quarterback guy at Alabama. Shepard was a wide receiver coach, co-offensive coordinator. It is possible they go ahead and try to find a quarterback that maybe kind of just slips through the cracks at Alabama, but is perfectly content being a starter from day one at Oregon State. Austin Mack would be a name to maybe keep an eye on there. So college football playoff is right around the corner. I feel stronger than ever, even with the assistants being gone and whatever, the coordinators may be moving on. Oregon has to win a playoff game this year. Anything less is a failure. You make the college football playoff, I don't care who you play, you're probably at home. Well, you're for sure at home. You have to win a playoff game at Autzen if you host a playoff game. I won't say anything other than that is gravy, because if you get blown out in the quarters again, that would be unacceptable. I don't think you can lose by 4 scores to an Ohio State or an Alabama. But I think this Oregon team needs to put a win in the historic college football playoff book in this 12-team playoff. And as it breaks, it looks pretty positive. And also, just as a total aside, Texas A&M, who we said last week was maybe the most fraudulent 11-0, 10-0 team we'd ever seen, exposed. I hope Oregon gets to play Texas A&M at some point, because I think they win that football game.
The way it is now, they're on the other side of the bracket. And again, a lot of this can change. You look at the way the bracket is right now, and if everything holds, chalk holds, Oregon is probably the 5, maybe the 6.
Sure.
Outside chance they're the 4. I mean, keep an eye on this. There could still be a bye if BYU finds a way to beat Texas Tech, and then BYU and Texas Tech will both go. Oregon will more likely than not be the 4 seed and get a bye. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, because Texas Tech is that much better than BYU, and they've already proved it. So if that happens, then Oregon is probably solidly in that 5-6. If Alabama gets boat raced, I mean, absolutely drilled by Georgia, there's a chance that Oregon or Texas Tech, one of them jumps up into that. But again, more than likely, if we're just being honest, Oregon is the 5. Yep. And you want Oregon to be the 5, because if Oregon's the 5, you get North Texas, Tulane. You just and no offense to North Texas and Tulane, Oregon should beat the brakes off of North Texas or Tulane.
Yep.
And I know they both, they sling it around, especially North Texas, but they're going through coaching changes, eyes off the ball. Both of those coaches have already taken better jobs, even though they're sticking around. Talent-wise, Oregon has there's no comparison. So yes, when it was Oregon, Alabama, Oregon, Notre Dame in the first round, I didn't think there was anything wrong with losing to that game. I thought those were coin flip games. You're more than likely playing the American Conference champion. Yeah, you beat the piss out of them. And then you get into that second round game, and you're probably looking at more like a Texas Tech or maybe an Alabama or a Georgia.
Winnable.
So a winnable game. But yeah, I mean, the way this is breaking, whether you end up being the 4, the 5, or the 6, yes, you're either getting a bye or you have a first round game that you have no business losing. Because even if you fall to the 6, you're getting the ACC champ, which means you're probably getting either Virginia or, God forbid, you might be getting like James Madison. So yes, the way this is breaking, Oregon has no excuse to lose that first playoff game at Autzen. So it's either a bye or you kick the living hell out of a team that you have no business being on the field with, because you're that much better, and you get the tune-up out of the way, and then you go on. And after that, I think those are all coin flip games. This is what I say about Oregon. When I watch Oregon, there's nothing about them that makes me say this is exceptional. Oh my God, this feels like a national championship team. But outside of Ohio State, no one else does either. There's not a single team that I look at outside of Ohio State where I say, I don't know what Ohio State's weakness is. They're even running the ball a little better.
Can I throw something at you?
Yeah, go for it.
What if I said to you, Oregon is not exceptional in any one category?
No.
Except versatility.
Yeah.
I think Oregon's versatility in the ways in which they can win is exceptional. And when I watch other teams in the country, I think they can win this way. They can win that way. They're elite at that. Their pass rush is elite. But I say, yeah, if they get in a shootout, they're in trouble, or they need to be, they need to be in this kind of game or they're in trouble. I think Oregon's versatility is elite. And I think that's a skill that we underrate and matters. And because of that, I think Oregon is a top 3 team to win the national title this year.
Yeah, I can't, again, do I think Oregon's going to win a national title? No. Because I go back to they've played 4 or 5 games against teams that we consider to be good. And there's not an elite one amongst them other than Indiana. And Indiana was just better than you were at your own place. Sure. Every other game you've played, I'm not going to say they've been like dogfights, but you needed double OT to beat Penn State. You needed a last-second drive to beat Iowa, who's a 7-win team. Washington was a 1-score game in the fourth quarter. USC, whatever. Wisconsin was ugly, but we know or not Wisconsin. I already mentioned Iowa. Who was the other one that you played a close game against? It was USC, UW, Indiana, Penn State. There was one other one off the top of my head. Anywho, anytime you've played a team that is a good team, they've been close games. And the one team that you've played that's an actual playoff team beat you by double digits at your place. So that's all I've said is, can Oregon string together 4 performances against the 3 or 4 best teams you've played all year and do it week after week? Because you're kind of living on that razor's edge. Same thing. I'd say the same thing about Texas A&M. Do I think Texas A&M wins a national title? No. But could they? Sure. No. But I just think eventually you're going to run into a team like, let you play Texas Tech. Texas Tech's front may just absolutely completely bottle up Oregon. And now you're in a rock fight like you were against Iowa, or maybe that game against Washington, and you need a play at the end to kind of rescue. And sure, Dante Moore can make that, but can you do it 4 weeks in a row? That's where I don't think so. But where I say it's possible is outside of Ohio State, who doesn't appear to have a weakness. I think Ohio State probably goes back to back. They don't. O-line, elite. D-line, elite. Secondary, elite. Receivers, elite. The run game, that's the one thing, and it's getting better. But they're just outside of that. Notre Dame has a weakness. Oklahoma has a weakness. Texas Tech has a weakness. Ole Miss doesn't have an offense right now. I think A&M is vastly overrated. Alabama, I don't know what they decide. They pull a Bo Nix and decide for like a quarter or two to just not play. Yeah. It's the strangest thing in the world. Georgia, I think, is starting to kind of look the part.
They're sound and coming together.
They're coming together. So, I mean, I would probably say Ohio State 1, Georgia 2. And outside of that, no one else really scares me. It's just a matter, can Oregon string together those games week after week after week after week? Sure. But again,
that's why I think Oregon's 3. That's my point.
Yeah, I just haven't seen it. And so I think eventually and I said the same thing about A&M, when I kind of feel like you're finding ways to win and you're kind of like, you're kind of living on that edge. Most of the time you get there, I just feel like eventually the ball is going to bounce the other way. But for someone, it's going to bounce the right way. So maybe it is Oregon, especially if they get healthy on the outside and you bring back a couple receivers. I just think eventually you're going to play a defense like Texas Tech that's going to be like, okay, well, Malik Benson's not going to beat us, and we're just going to overwhelm you with our front. And, there's nothing you can do. And that would worry me a bit. But, Oregon.
And then you've got a top 10 defense. So
you got a top 10 defense. Score. Yes. Like I said, outside, if you can find a way to avoid Ohio State, Oregon can beat anyone in this tournament. I just think, I don't know. It doesn't smell to me. Last year I said it and I was wrong. I thought Oregon last year was going to win a national title. Yeah. I thought going into that, I said Oregon's the best team in the country. And at no point this year have I said that Oregon's the best team in the country. And wouldn't that be the most college football thing ever for the team that I've said last year, oh yeah, this is a national title team, and gets boat raced by Ohio State. And then this year, not one time, with the exception maybe Oklahoma State, that I say this looks like a national championship team, and then they go on and win the whole damn thing. It would be the cherry on top of a very weird college football playoff.
No, they have elite versatility, and they may have elite depth, where it doesn't matter who you put in, they find a way to keep the system right on rolling. And I do think in this kind of tournament that's a dogfight, when there's no true juggernaut, that matters a lot.
Sure.
That matters a lot. So we'll see. I have a lot more faith in this Oregon team. I took a lot more. Clearly, I took a lot more from beating Iowa, beating USC, and beating Washington the way they did than you did. To me, those are different styles. Those teams are different. And Oregon was never threatened really, truly, by any of those teams where I thought they're going to lose. I thought, it might go to overtime. It's tough.
I always scored to take the lead with like 2.5 minutes to go.
And I just thought Oregon would go down and kick a field goal. I did. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I just thought Oregon's going to go down and kick a field goal. So I get you. They were definitely threatened by Iowa. I just wasn't in a place where I was like, oh boy, here we go. They're in trouble, because I just think they're really, really good at finding ways to win. And when that's your magic sauce, is belief and togetherness, as corny as all that stuff sounds. And you've never heard me preach that before. I do think buy-in and belief that you can win it matters. And I think there are a lot of locker rooms right now, because of coaching changes, because of, where they're finishing this year, there's doubt in their locker rooms a little bit, just like, I'm not sure. And I think this Oregon team believes in who they are right now. And I think that matters a ton. Texas A&M rattled. A bunch of these teams, coaching changes. And, Iowa, Georgia even's got to be looking around going, dude, we're nowhere near as good as some of our teams that won a national title.
Yeah.
And you've got this Oregon team right now that's going, we're beating people in all sorts of different styles with one hand tied behind our back because of injuries. Imagine if these guys come back. And we don't know that yet. But if DeCorian Moore comes back for the playoff run, they're going to feel even better. If Evan Stewart's able to play, they're going to feel even better. If Gary Bryant Jr. plays, they're going to feel even better. And all those things are going to be huge. And Oregon doesn't lose games that they shouldn't. And I think first round playoff game would be a game they shouldn't lose.
Oh no, they will. I'll tell you right now, whatever that spread is, I'll take it. I'll take it. The offensive line of North Texas or Tulane versus Oregon's defensive front. Yeah,
and that's the other thing.
I will blindly take. Honestly, right now, I'll $50. Anyone that wants, I will blindly take Oregon, whatever the point spread is. I don't even know what the point spread is, and it won't matter. Oregon is going to beat the piss out of Tulane or North Texas.
Yeah. Any parting thoughts for you on this Oregon team, this regular season coming to an end, in terms of where they are at? I just spoke for a while, so I figured I'd at least give you the floor if you want to say something before we get out of here.
No, I mean, you think their ceiling is a little higher than I do. But I agree. I mean, I agree with your take. Like there's chance, but I think that has to do more with, I don't think there's anyone else. I just don't
totally agree with that. Yeah. If there were a juggernaut, I'd say they've got no shot, but there's not. So I think they have a shot.
Yeah. And I'll buy into that. I just think, I've said it all along, I think next year's team, if Dante Moore comes back, is significantly better than this year's team. You can say, Iowa and UW and USC, you took more from that. Those are impressive wins because you found ways to win, I think, against very, very average teams. You played one team that was an elite team this year, and they beat you by double digits at your place. That's just a fact.
Right. And my counter to that was, you could call a pretty vanilla game plan with guys banged up and beat pretty good teams rather easily. We can argue Iowa.
Okay. Well, double overtime isn't easy, and a last minute drive.
I'm talking about the end. USC and Washington.
I don't care about that. Whatever. But bottom line is, again, if you want to go Penn State, which ended up being a bad team, again,
but they weren't when Oregon played them. They weren't.
Okay. All right. Well, they weren't good. I'm sorry. Okay. Well, you needed double overtime to beat them. Sure. And you needed a last minute drive. And again, you got it against Iowa, and Indiana was just better than you were. So pardon me for thinking that when you play Ohio State and when you play Notre Dame, and then when you play Georgia, or God forbid, Indiana, back to back to back, pardon me for thinking that somewhere along the way, you're going to stub your toe. And it's not an indictment. It's not me saying that I think Oregon's bad. I just don't think the way they've played this year, to me, looks like a national championship team. But to be fair, Ohio State, most of the last season, during the regular season, didn't look like a national title team. But they put it together when it mattered most. And so maybe Oregon comes out in those first 2 weeks and just, you're like, holy hell, here's the buzzsaw. So are they capable of doing it? Absolutely. But I just, I believe it. I believe what I see with my eyes.
Like, subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Leave a 5-star review. We really appreciate it. I apologize for the earlier iPad ringing over and over and the minor pause. Thanks for being patient. You just like seeing me get pissed off, which nobody else saw, by the way. Nobody saw all of that.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing that. GT. Gave me a chuckle.
Anyway, all right, we'll be back later in the week to break down some more action, coaching carousel, signing day, some of that stuff. As always, guys, appreciate you.